So, welcome everybody. Today is our 35th book club discussion. We are doing the selected short stories of Premchand from this specific collection by Maple Classics. So, let's begin. We're going to see a little bit about the author and the influences which he had in life, especially through Mahatma Gandhiji. And uh, we'll also be seeing about his attitude towards feminism, what he felt should be the purpose of writing. And since we specifically read his short stories, so we'll have a look at his style of writing short stories and some of his writing structure and style too. And generally, let's have a discussion about the challenges when it comes to translation. So Munshi Premchand was born on 31st July 1880 and he passed away on 8th October 1936. So his works are nearly a century old for us. And he was born in a village near Varanasi. He was the son of a post office clerk and he was named as Danpat Rai, literally meaning master of wealth, but it said that he waged a lifelong battle against unremitting poverty. So in fact, he was born into a rich family and landowners, and his grandfather was a major landowner and everything. But of course, through colonization and all the other challenges which kept coming up after that, he lost his parents at an early age, and all that pushed him more and more into poverty, and especially being a writer is another thing, I guess. He's famous for his modern Hindustani literature, and he's a pioneer of Hindu and Urdu social fiction, which was quite a new genre for his time. He wrote about things which have always existed but had hitherto been considered beyond the pale of literature. For example, about exploitation, submission, greed and corruption of the rich capitalist class, the straitjacket of poverty, and the unyielding caste system. So before Premchand stepped into writing, the literature which was being written was based on the themes of detectives, adventure, patriotism, fantasy, and romance. In fact, romance was one of the biggest genre then. So all this literature was basically meant to take readers to a virtual world, a fantasy world. So literature was meant for the purpose of leisure and for time pass. He was one of the first authors to write about uh, caste hierarchies, the plights of women, laborers, etc., prevalent in the society in the late 1880s. So he was one of the most celebrated writers of the Indian subcontinent and is regarded as one of the foremost Hindi writers of early 20th century. His works include Godan, Karma Bhumi, Gaban, Mansarovar, Idga, and we were just speaking about Nirmala. So he published his first collection of 5 short stories in 1907 in a book called Sozi Vatan, so Sorrow of the Nation. And Sozi Vatan was found to be so incendiary and seditious that not only was it banned by the imperial government, but all the copies of the book were also burnt. So his works included more than a dozen novels, about 300 short stories, several essays, and translations of a number of foreign literary works into Hindi. He's also translated Leo Tolstoy, and he was very much influenced by Russian literature and by the Russian Revolution. He wrote in both Urdu and Hindi, and in his opinion, he felt language was only a means to an end. So initially, when he used to write in Urdu, it was popular, but it didn't reach as many people as he had wanted it to, which is why he started writing in Hindi. He was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi and by the Russian Revolution. He began writing in the early 1900s under the pen name of Nawab Rai. Actually, it was a derivative of his real name, which is Danpat Rai, which meant the wielder of wealth. And Nawab used to be his pet name. In fact, his uncle used to always call him Nawab, and which is why he kind of put those two names together and he gave himself the pen name of Nawab Rai. He adopted the name Premchand only in 1909 after his first collection of short stories. The Sozi Watan had drawn the ire of the British government, and they claimed it to be seditious, and they had all the copies burned. So after that, when he started writing again, he took up the name of Premchand. So earlier writers used, Sanskritized Hindi or um, Faranshit Hindi, and which was understandable only by the elite section of the society. So the language which Premchand used was Hindustani, and it was spoken by the majority of the people. So it was very easy to read and connect with. So when Premchand was writing on these common, on these themes, people very became very interested in his works, and it started getting talked about by even in the masses. In fact, it said that many people started learning Devanagari script so that they could read his stories. So such was the craze for his writing. There are not many writers who had written on a variety of issues faced by different sections of society. Therefore, the themes which he picked in his works made him a very great writer. Also, he seemed to have been a lot influenced by the Gandhiji's principles, and most of them can be seen as a choice in his works. For example, there are many stories about the need for widow remarriage, the widespread system of dowry, untouchability, the problems of the landless laborers, urgent need for land reform, and the lot of the underpaid and overworked salaried people who resort to bribery and corruption, and the social and class inequalities which cause good people to do bad things. So these are some of the themes which you can constantly see being reinforced in his stories and spoken about. um, Another interesting part of Premchand is how he was a staunch feminist. In fact, he fought for women's rights with his words. He had a very restless and courageous spirit, and it got expression in his first short novel, Asrar-e Mabit. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. So, this explored the corruption among temple priests and their sexual exploitation of poor women. So, the issue was a very sensitive one, and he kind of took it head on. And interestingly enough, even the women writers of that period, such as Mahadevi Verma and Suhadra Kumari Chauhan, did not raise their voice for their counterparts. On the contrary, Premchand made no attempt to portray the women, as a silently suffering victim. So his women characters did not stay quiet. They voiced the strongest arguments, complaints, and feelings. So his story, this Thakur Ka Kwan, is a very popular one, and he had his, uh, the women protagonist face, he shows her as she's a person who's willing to face the wraths of the Thakurs while trying to fetch clean drinking water for her ailing husband. So she doesn't succeed, which is another matter. But in showing a woman who is at the very least trying to go where she is forbidden was something huge at that time. So Premchand was showing the way, a way that would be seized by the progressive writers who came immediately after him. So these writers would turn his woman protagonist who didn't succeed into a person who was slowly a torch bearer of lasting social change. And apart from his literary life, even in his personal life, he had the guts to stand against society's norms. For instance, he married the child widow Shivarani Devi in 1906. So before Shivarani Devi, actually, Premchand was already married. He was married at the age of 15 to a lady who was older to him. And he wasn't in favor of the marriage right from the beginning. And later on, they had a falling out too, and his wife left him. So after which, I think he never went back to her, and they just parted. Then he married the child widow Shivarani Devi in 1906, and this step was considered revolutionary. In fact, Premchand had to face a lot of opposition about this. And Shivarani Devi later wrote a book after Premchand's death um, about her life with Premchand. and that's also a pretty popular read, is what I've heard. So this is very interesting about the Premchand. So Premchand had a very strong views on what writing should be for, and he has given this very famous speech about the purpose of writing, which is kind of become a manifesto for the writers' movements which followed. So he says art shouldn't be just for art's sake, but it should be for life's sake. He's always been a revolutionary in his heart. So I'm just giving here and there some quotes from the speech too. So I write for only one sake, to present a human truth or to show a new angle of looking at common things, he wrote. So his affinity towards socially engaging and purposive literature became evident when he supported a new kind of writing that was beginning to take shape in the 1930s. He had the courage to publish in his influential Hindi journal Hans, the manifesto which was written by young Turks in London that later initiated the progressive writers movement. And in the progressive writers movement, in fact, Premchand became the president of the movement. And when they held, an ambition, first of a kind meeting of the All India Progressive Writers Association on April 9th, 1936, Premchand rose to the occasion with everything as his command, as a writer. So not only did he give his wholehearted support to this fledgling association, but his presidential address would in later years become a manifesto of sorts for a literary movement, unlike any other in the history of India. So this was a moment which would shape the response of a whole generation of Indian intelligentsia. The speech in its entirety is there on this website called Indian History Collective. So in his presidential address, which is called as Sahitya Ka Udeshya, the aim of literature, this greatest storyteller of his time told his audience how good literature can only be founded on truth, beauty, freedom, and humanity. So, in simple but powerful words, he stated that to him, literature was simply the criticism of life. So, witnessing the turmoil and pain in the world around, a Sahardya reader could no longer be content with the wondrous tales of love and escape. So, he is mature enough to understand and face the bitter realities of life. So, Premchand believed that currently good literature is judged by the sharpness of its perception, which stirs our feelings and thoughts into motion. So, the main aim of literature then was to refine the mind of readers. And while undoubtedly the aim of art was to strengthen one's sense of beauty, art too must be weighed on the same scale of usefulness as everything else in life. However, his definition of utility was not one tied to economic productivity or some cold calculations. Rather, he spoke of social utility. He wanted literature to rouse people, to instill in them the desire to challenge society and its oppressive system. And most of all, he wanted it to be free of the apron strings of a particular class. Yet he did not mean that literature must be judged only according to its social message. An artist's tool would still be the inherent sense of beauty in all human beings. But our measure of beauty itself needs to be redefined, he says. So, according to Premchand, beauty lay not in hiding the ugly aspects of human life. Truly beautiful literature made us face the grim realities of life in a spirit of determination. So, this was literally revolutionary thinking in literature for his time period. And in his, in his time period in the world of literature, in fact. So literature is no longer limited to individualism or egotism, but tends to turn more and more towards the psychological and social. Now, literature does not view the individual as separate from society. On the contrary, it sees the individual as an indissoluble part of society. A quick mind and a fast pen is simply not enough. A writer must also be abreast of the latest scientific, social, historical, or psychological, I think I left that sentence, psychological changes that are happening in society. So, a writer's mind should work on a broader canvas. He was of the view that the Indian society stays away from such subtle matters, and thus the need for far more socially engaged literature has become even more urgent than ever. A writer has an immense responsibility. We will have to raise the standard of our literature so that it can serve the society more usefully. Our literature will discuss and assess every aspect of life, and we will no longer be satisfied with eating the leftovers of other languages and literatures. We will ourselves increase the capital of our literature. Um, so I think he's tried to do that through the short stories. That is the purpose of his writing the short stories. It was more easier to reach the people with it. Um, so when it comes to his short stories, he was a man of acute social consciousness and an unerring life for detail. So Premchand's short stories talk about the pain and suffering of the toiling masses that has been suppressed for centuries. So he felt the pulse of the real India which he expressed. Therefore, he used many a times he used stereotypes wherever necessary to make general observations. He painted on a very large canvas with broad, sweeping brushstrokes. And mostly his stories, his short stories especially, seem preachy or moralistic. And otherwise, it's outright sentimental to the modern readers. So it is a little difficult sometimes for the modern readers to kind of wrap their heads around it. So his simple but intense style, his appeal to that inherent goodness in every human being living on this earth, it's something that touches the heart, irrespective of the age and the times. And I think we can feel that in the short stories too, though it might at times appear preachy and it also appears sometimes too sentimental and all that, but still it's got that simple, beautiful aspect, and it kind of touches your heart and kind of makes you feel for the characters too you're reading about. So his short stories with their moralistic overtones appeal to all that is good and decent in us, all that is moved by injustice, exploitation, and intolerance around. So when it comes to the author's style, so it is always this is the first one is a quote by a huge fan of Premchand's writing, which I found online. So where he says that it has always remained a mystery to me. How can somebody turn a simple short story into such a beautiful masterpiece? So he's a great player with words, and his writings have always been a reflection of the society where the marginalized, like the widows, the peasants, the farmers, the beggars, the prostitutes, were crushed each and every day by the hollow rules of the society. And with his amazing writing skills, he can make the reader to feel the same level of exploitation as the characters of his stories. So one of the things which Premchand has been appreciated for again and again, and which is quite true, is that um, his writing at that time, usually where it was more of romance and adventure and mystery, his writing kind of made people feel relate themselves to the character. And these were characters like widows and peasants and farmers, maybe people who are far removed from them, but they could, through his words, understand what that person was going through, which was uh, something really to be appreciated about his in his writing. See, he focused more on evoking those feelings rather than on the plot of the story. Okay, so he does not excite the readers with any sudden twists and suspense, etc. Instead, his way of describing the details and thinking of characters is the main attraction of his writing. So he has rarely used abstruse, abstruse Hindi words, and he has remained quite simple in his way of describing things. So when so one of the main things in his way of writing is simplicity. So simple language, simple, very realistic plots for the time, and simple vocabulary and short sentences. Another interesting thing about his short stories, which I'm sure all of you must have noticed too, is that he always has this omniscient point of view. So he tries to keep the whole story in such a way that he is actually present there when the incident takes place, and he keeps himself as the character of observer in the whole story. So he's the person who knows it all. He knows about the characters, he knows about what's happening, he knows about the feelings, and so usually there is a very and also of course all of his stories have this moral or a learning or a takeaway which you can take from the story, probably a hangover from our Grimm's fairy tales times and all, where we always have this moral of the story below. I'm not sure if he doesn't do that, but every story he's tried to keep some moral or some takeaway over there. And it's also very interesting to see how he does his omniscient point of view, while sometimes it does become a little difficult for us to read in today's time, I think, because you don't see the characters actually enacting out the scene. It feels like the author is just narrating that, so things happened, this happened, that happened, and yeah, so it's completely a tell. There is no show in any of the stories. So yeah, so before we go into the challenges of translation, I'm going to stop the screen share and let you talk about your views of his writing.
Just give me a
Yes,
small moment, madam.
yes,
This mobile battery is running out. I'm switching to another mobile. Please allow me to join again.
sure,
I'm
sure,
coming out
please.
of this session. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, please. Yes, Meghalay or anyone, did you actually, Meghalay, have you read the book?
No, I haven't read it. Yeah.
Okay,
I
okay,
just
okay.
wanted to hear what you guys say and then read it.
Okay. Might
Yeah.
be a little, it's a little bit of a difficult in the sense, not difficult in reading. It's actually very simple in reading, but I think not very engrossing is the word to say. I
Okay, okay.
think, uh, Bharatwaj, if you are okay about, you don't need to turn on the camera. If you want, you can just unmute yourself. And I think you read the first couple of stories, right?
I can understand from what you said how the story.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Ramya and Meenal, was the novel also in the same way? In case you remember, did the novel also be a narrative kind of a thing, or was there
Uh,
was dialogues, and how was it?
I, I'm not able to recall. I think it was more like a narration, if I'm not mistaken,
Narration. Mm,
through
mm.
the perspective of an omniscient narrator.
Okay,
But
okay.
I remember, I mean, what I remember about Premchand is he always, tackled some social problem or social issue that was prevalent in society. So in Nirmala, I remember the problem of a young girl getting married to an old man,
Yeah,
almost her
correct.
father's age. And then she befriends his son, who is, her age and
Ah,
sort of an eligible suitor to her, and then the
mm,
problems that arise in the marriage and how she has to
mm,
manage the household affairs and try and salvage her marriage.
mm,
So
mm,
and then her husband gets suspicious and all that, and also
mm,
finally leads to that boy's death. So this is what I recall of the story, but I remember that it was very very tragic and sort of tugging at your
mm,
heart's strings.
mm,
So
mm,
always,
mm,
Premchand's whatever stories I've read, they're always a realistic portrayal of society at that time, and
mm.
mostly tragic in nature.
Okay. Yes.
This is my
True,
recollection of
true, true. They are.
Premchand's.
Yeah. In
Yeah, I
fact,
don't remember the style either, as I just read it
okay.
many, many years before. I don't remember, but I just remember the story. I think,
Mm,
as Meenal was saying, right? Uh, I remember strong characterizations,
mm,
very strong characters that I still can recall,
mm,
all set in a very social in the social setting of those days perhaps, and it was giving a clear insight into the challenges that it had a woman's point of view, I think. Of course, the book is named Nirmala, but I think so. She is the central character. But then, from a young girl to almost like a middle-aged, she also the transformation in her. So the characters are very strong. There's a lot of tragedy. There's a lot of how the social dynamics cause those tragedies, right? That's also there. And very raw, I felt. It was-
Correct, correct. In fact, after you had mentioned Nirmala, I had read up about it online, and it was written itself during that period when there was a lot of debate around whether we should have a minimum, age for girls to get married. I
Mm.
guess the protagonist there, she gets married very early or something, and like that. Is that so?
Yeah. She gets married to
Yeah,
an
Uh,
yeah. I
old
think
man
she was
also.
barely 15, if I'm not
uh,
mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah. So that minimum age of marriage was getting fixed in society at that time legally. And I think that the entire book was written as a response to that debate which is going on. And his stance that, yes, we should definitely have something like that because he himself was married when he was 15 years of age. So, and he did not like that marriage, and that was the marriage which failed, after which he married another child widow, in fact. So she's also what was a child whom he married. So he felt very strongly about this. And like what Meenal said, every time, he wanted to point out something. He wanted to point out some social evil. And maybe the reason why he made it as tragic as it was probably he felt that's how to touch the people's heart and make them understand that it's such an important thing, I guess.
So when I read it, I didn't realize the time
Mm.
frame when he lived, or I didn't think pay
Mm.
any attention or thought to that. But as I was hearing you talk today, I kind of realized, oh, okay, because I didn't at the time, I didn't. I was, like I said, I was probably in my 6th or 7th grade, so I really didn't think through so much. But now that I think about it, for
Mm.
those days, if he had written this, right? I mean, that's something
Yeah,
really impressive. And like you said,
definitely.
the tragedy is, I think, meant to portray that, okay, this is not going to end well. If you start
Exactly.
with something like a child marriage,
Yeah.
it's not going to have
Mm.
a good ending.
Correct, correct. And also, he didn't want I remember you telling me, Ramya, that the character is very strong and she also gets very upset, and she gets into some evil mental framework or something like that. So that was also his way of saying that women are strong, so you don't need to take everything what happens to you, kind of. He didn't want a very
It's a
docile
very
women.
impressive, yeah, very
Yeah.
impressive that so initially you were really rooting for Nirmala. See, again, it's coming from years back I read, but I somehow remember these shades from that book.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the text at all. Okay, it's
Mm,
just, but I
mm,
remember these things, the
mm.
themes I remember. So one thing I remember is initially you kind of root for Nirmala, right? She's a little girl, and she's very shy, and she gets into this. So you're rooting for her. And then I
Mm,
think at some point, if I'm right, the old man dies and she becomes a widow, and you're
mm.
rooting for her even more. But then over time, right, the life makes her a different person. And it's
Correct.
not like she turns into, so she also becomes very bitter, and she actually takes it out on one of the sons, I guess. And she's not really nice to everybody. So there are a lot of gray shades, even in,
Mm.
so that's kind of, at that age, I found it very hard to digest, because I was kind of used to a more black and white portrayal of at least the
Yeah,
leading character.
correct, correct.
So it's like, what is happening, But now I
Mm.
kind of, when I think about it, I think he made that character so complex, so impressive, that he thought through all that. And
Correct.
probably a very good reflection of what we see these. I mean, I have seen in some households, right? Old women in those. I mean, I've seen like a couple of examples come to my mind, but
Mm.
people who've been widowed very, very early in those days, because they have been
Mm.
like oppressed so much, they take it
Correct.
out on everybody else. Like,
Yeah.
they are mean to their grandkids, they are mean to their daughter-in-laws, etc.,
Mm.
etc.
True,
So
true.
maybe it was a reflection of how the
Yeah,
society was then.
yeah. Very true, I think. and it's revolutionary because that all the more reason because nobody in fact spoke or wrote about such things then, though it was there, so. And even like in the particular collection, Shamal Rao ji also must have read this. There is the story of the panchayat one. I think it's called the Holy Panchayat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly correct.
yeah. So
I
there
really enjoyed
also.
reading this book, ma'am.
Oh,
I
okay.
really enjoyed it because we worked it out. It is only 200 pages, 19
Mm,
stories, roughly 10 pages a story.
correct.
And the stories are very eloquent. And as
Mm,
you said already in your presentation, he is a master storyteller.
correct.
Another thing was the stories were not complex. We can easily follow them. Perhaps the
Correct.
life was, rather, the stories reflected the life at that time, not that
Mm,
complex and other things.
yeah.
Or it is the author's intent to communicate things very clean, straight, without any confusion or without any distortion, very reflective of the conditions of the society at that time.
Correct.
And there was a phrase used in the slides, purposive
Mm,
literature. I really enjoyed. This is what it came to me. Each story had a purpose in it. It was
correct.
not just written. It was a target. It was a purpose that was going to get fulfilled. And all these
Mm,
19 stories I found you can compress them in a single line, purpose that actually the story was communicating. If we
mm,
begin with, actually, let us take the very first story, a gift of Holi.
mm,
In this case, actually, we have two women on one side, actually, who seeks a sari from her husband, and the other one who stops the sari getting purchased from a shop that was selling foreign goods.
foreign goods.
And
Correct.
subsequently, the latter women, we can put her as a stronger woman who
Mm,
dominates, and the hero actually gives up purchasing and joins the freedom movement.
correct.
That is the message. And the other
Correct.
one, Holy Panchayat, which I just touched actually, how
Mm,
truth and honesty prevails
mm,
at the cost of friendship, and
yeah.
that is reconciliation. There is a
Mm,
message in it, actually. And another thing, any withered relationship also can flower. That is the message I found in the Holy Panchayat. Let us
mm,
go for Eidgah, the other story.
mm,
And the happiness is in the small things like Tonga.
mm,
All his friends purchase actually costly toys and other things. But Hamid, actually, he purchased only a Tonga to help his
his
grandmother to
grandmother.
this make rotis without having her fingers burnt. And that brings lot of happiness to their
Yeah.
family. They were only two staying together. And chess players, we need not say actually. It has come as a movie also. It appears Shatranj ke Khiladi, like that. Sita Rai has brought out the movie. And
Mm,
because these two fellows were dangerously obsessive about are involved in a particular game, and how it brings tragedy and death into their life. That means
correct.
anything that you are obsessive about, you should end
Mm,
up with sorrow. That is perhaps is the message. And the salt inspector I really like. That is all the most how actually righteousness triumphs over evil. That is the message from that story. And then a wintry night. That is also
mm,
a good thing. How deaths can crush the life of poor people, which you touch poverty and other things.
correct.
So similarly, Shroud. That for me is a very heart-touching story. The women lies dying are dead actually. Son and father forget their sorrow by drinking, taking to alcoholism, and dancing at the end. Plus, that is how poor people solve their issues, real issues.
Mm,
Sorrow remains, death remains, bad things have remained. But even if they try to escape to the bottle, that is what I
correct.
want.
Mm,
That is, if you can work out actually, all these 19 stories can be summed up as one line or one and a half line or maximum two-line messages. What he tried to communicate. That is the beauty of the writing of the author. That is what I
yes,
felt. That is,
that's true.
and he has not compromised in writing actually. Nowhere. If you
Yeah.
look at that writer, he goes to the Jamindar's house to be honored and other things. But when you ask him to recite a poem or something, he says nothing to him. I'm not going to do it now. Though he is very poor, he doesn't compromise on ethics of writing. And that is quite in contrast to the present day. So these are a few stories I read, and this is what I suddenly recollect actually, which have contained a message, and which basically confirmed your observation that he goes in for purposive literature.
Correct.
That's what I thought. Thank you,
True,
ma'am.
true. Did you feel like the writing style? Did you feel anything, you
The
know?
writing style is simple,
Mm,
straightforward, and innocent. That's what I found. Because there is no distortion or writing something, meaning something, understand. No, it is very
correct.
straight. What is said, that is understood. That is what
Mm,
I found. There is no distortion between the giver and the receiver. No
correct,
distortion.
correct.
What other
True.
wanted to communicate, I am sure 100% will be received by the reader on the other side. Maybe I do not know because I have not read
Mm,
any of his Hindi books or Parsi books, as I said just
correct.
earlier. Whether it is the beauty of his writing or the beauty of the translation, that because we are reading the book in English, the beauty of the
Yeah.
translation, or that is his own style of writing. And another thing, I have not read any of his novels since Madam has said Nirmala and other things. Perhaps I would put my hand on one of the books you have quite at length discussed. I shall also go for reading a novel of him. That is
Sure,
the thing.
you should, you
Thank
should.
you.
Actually, I had a discussion with Tulika, though she's not come here today. In fact, Tulika was one of the reasons why we picked up Premchand. And so
She was instrumental in
yeah,
suggesting this.
yes, yes. But she wasn't happy with this translation, by the way, Shamal Raoji. And somehow even
Okay.
I felt there is something it felt like lacking, if I'm not sure about what is the word to use, so she
Punch.
felt there was something about his writing which this translation has not done justice to it. Is
Okay, okay.
So that was Tulika's view. So Tulika said,
Yes.
in fact, Tulika had sent me a message. She's like, I really feel I should apologize for suggesting this book because couldn't find any of his translations in the store. So I couldn't read
Okay.
other translations to see if that was a better one than what I had suggested. So I just picked up the one which had
Acha.
the best stories. But she feels that
Acha.
what version of Premchand we are reading has done no justice at all to the actual Premchand stories. So he sees there's such
I
a
also tried
beauty
to
to his
find out
language.
who is the translator and who is the
Yeah.
translator, but some could not find out. And as
Mm,
we read earlier, many of originals have multiple translations by multiple writers, as in case of
correct,
Russian writings.
correct, correct.
In this case, I thought whether it is a single first line translation or second, we could not
Mm,
find out. But
mm.
you
So
can't appreciate or criticize unless you read the original.
correct, correct.
In
So
language original, it was written. If you can write and appreciate, then you can
mm,
try a parallel or compare and then say this is good or this is
yeah,
not that good thing.
correct, correct.
That
So
is the thing.
since I think since most of any of us here except for Ramya and Meenal, I think nobody has read him in Hindi. So we have
Oh,
no way of judging whether this is a good translation or not. But what Tulika felt was
that
it's
is what we
definitely
are
not.
handicapped.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Because she
So
had the advantage of
yeah,
reading both in both languages, so she could. But
correct,
for us, actually, is only one side. So
correct.
we are not. I feel in a better position to say or comment
Exactly.
on the work. We can
Yeah,
appreciate the story, we can appreciate the language, we can appreciate the message, or we will say the purpose that God served. We can.
correct,
That is what
correct.
I feel. But it is a quick read, unlike earlier
It was a
books which
quick.
we take to for the
Yeah.
purpose. It is a
After
quick read, and
yeah,
even if we want to,
after Crime and Punishment also. So that you know,
no, no,
that was a
that
very
was a
interesting
beautiful.
read, beautiful book, but I think
Uh,
it had its own length.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So this
Exactly.
felt very, very
It has its
simple.
own.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, it is a huge book, but easy to read. That's
Correct,
quantum.
correct.
That one.
True.
Unlike Milan Kundra's book or Gunter Gratz, actually, though books are small, actually, it is difficult to read.
Yeah,
But
that is
this
true.
Crime and Punishment of that type, we were
Yeah,
able to
very.
read, we were able to enjoy, we were able to keep
Yes.
track. Only names created a problem for us. Different, I had to keep
Yeah.
note every time which name refers to.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
True.
it was a wonderful simulation.
The one issue which I had with his writing was that omniscient point of view was at times, I think I kind of found it a little difficult to read. It felt more like I am not in the story. Somebody else has seen the story and just coming and
Ah,
telling me the story. So
yes, yes,
in
yes, that
some
is good.
stories it didn't feel difficult, but in some places and some scenes that was kind of jarring. And maybe that's only because we storytelling has evolved a lot now when compared to then. So
Yes,
maybe that's what.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
true.
It is a period book, we can put
Yeah,
that way. That means
correct.
you have to transport yourself to a specific period, start reading, get involved. Then only you're in a position to appreciate. If you
Correct.
want to view the particular book to the present parameters, I'm sure it will be difficult for us. So we
Correct.
have read Owenry, Gady Moppa, and all those things. They are different.
Yeah.
They have lot more appeal. This is
Yeah.
more an Indian type specific
Mm-mm.
period, and it has come from a language to English, so
Correct.
it has its own limitations. But if you can position yourself in that period, as Madam has said, widow
Yeah.
marriages, issues that are facing society, crisis that was there, corruption that was there, and domination of jamindaris, and we don't have those such jamindars now. If you can visualize for a while and then put yourself there, I'm sure you'll be able to enjoy the depth of all the stories that are there. Even
True.
nowadays, some period movies come. Initially,
Mm.
after 15, 20 minutes, actually, you will not know where you are standing. But once
Mm.
you get into the skin of the story and the moment, you will definitely start enjoying. That's what it
Correct.
will be a thankful job.
Yeah. So the last part of the discussion was I had a little bit written about translation and the challenges when it comes to translation, which is what I think I had wanted Tulika to also be there to see this. So one of
Acha.
the things was the evolution of language, both. So now here Hindi has also changed. Hindi storytelling has also evolved and changed, and so is with the English language. But so there's a kind of a gap which falls between, I think, the Hindi and the way of storytelling at that time to the language and the developments which are happening now. So for us, I feel when we read this, sometimes it's a little difficult. I felt at least, but um, to give a little bit more of context. In fact, there was this discussion we were having in another group today about a short story which is translated from Tamil to English, and that's also about a 60-year-old short story. 60, right, Ramya? I think it was a 60-year-old short story. So the challenge in that short story
I
was
think she
that
said 1960s. So that's what.
1960s.
But
Okay.
it's kind of
Yeah. So
the
approximately
same
about 80.
typos.
Yeah, something approximately same like this.
Mm.
But the short story in there, the inside a short story of about roughly about 9 to 10 pages itself, there was the jumping point of view between two different characters. And you never know who is going to be the next person. So in fact, it was very jarring and very difficult to understand in the initial part of it, because the point of view was just shifting between the two characters. And so we were just discussing how tough it was to kind of translate a piece like that into English. uh, when I'm just comparing that with what Premchand has done, I feel his storytelling still has been, kind of even a little bit more evolved when you compare to that, because he hasn't done any jumping point of views and all that. The only thing which I found difficult was the show, and there was no show. It was all tell. He tells you the whole story. That's it. So that was the only thing which kind of jarred me. And so I think storytelling as a form has evolved enormously over the last 100 years. And for them at that point of time, even in the story, whether I'm talking about the Tamil short story or for the short story of Premchand, what they did at that time was pretty revolutionary, trying to bring in some important social themes into this in the form of a story. So yes.
Sorry, Archana, just a quick thought I had was, I know you guys have been reading a lot of English classics. So, and I'm not an avid reader of English classics, so I cannot comment, but I was just, so even the few that I've read, I did feel like there's a lot of tell, right? I mean, there's a lot of narration. And so do you also feel that this is not just with Premchand, but generally of those times? I mean, like even if you read a Jane Austen, right? Or so there's not a lot of dialogues, and there's very few of them. There's a lot of focus on creating the setting and then just telling the story, and then the whole. Of course, the language itself varies, but even other than that, it's a lot more. It's not as
As I
because
agree with you,
nowadays, if you describe so much, right, nobody is going to read what you are writing. No, I mean you can't keep. So I mean, because there are books where there are pages and pages and pages of just setting the context or just describing something, or so that's something we've seen in those days. So
Correct.
perhaps it's a writing style across languages, and because in this fast-paced world, we've sort of evolved the style of writing as well, because I don't think we
Yeah.
have the patience for and we want a little more dialogues, and we want something that's we want more twists, and we want more crisp writing. Do you think that
Yeah.
way? Where because now you have you've discussed certain other
Correct.
books, right? So I
You
was
know,
just wondering.
um, like where after you mentioned that, Ramya, it's very true, I would say, but not in all. I would still say it's not in all. Like, I'm just trying to recollect, some of my favorite classics, how much of show and tell was there. And whatever I could remember is, I'm just telling you names just out of my head. Like Wuthering Heights, I has a lot of description, agreed, has a lot of setting and place and all that. But the story is never told to you. You see the story, you can feel the story, it's happening in front of your eyes. So Jane Austen, Jane Austen, I think there are places where she does tell the story, isn't it? I'm not very sure. Some portions, I think, but there is a lot of show. Like for
Yeah, yeah.
example, in here there are some entire scenes I feel where it's just like he's just telling you the story.
Telling,
So this
okay.
person came, and there was this happened, and then this person went there. uh you know um, so you never see that actually happening. I don't know how to explain it exactly. Maybe if I read out a short story, you'll be like, okay, so this is how it is. Like for example, like if you there's a passage like Rameshwari wiped her tears and said, brother, what was destined to happen has happened, but you must find the culprit. So this is like one of those rare places where there's a dialogue and she's telling you, what happened. But very soon later on, just two paragraphs after that, you have like for example, by the afternoon the postmortem was over, the body was taken towards the river, the whole office and thousands of people were gathered, the cremation rites were performed. uh eh, at least
Essay
this,
kind of tone.
yeah, it's at least in this it's okay. Like for example, by chance one day Purnima herself came there with her younger child. She had a widowed maternal aunt who stayed with her mother. She was still alive, and this is how the empty house was settled again. When Amrit heard the news, he rushed to meet her, as if pulled by a magical force. He was carefully taking along the beautiful memories of his childhood with him. So the whole
Okay.
thing is just told to you. You never see
Understood.
Amrit, you never see Purnima, you never see the child, or you know, of course you can connect with them. The story is touching, you kind of thing. But I think this form of storytelling in some ways has changed.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the reasons I feel we have it like this is because literature itself was in a very oral narrated form at then, right? So from there you went into plays, and writing was a much little more later development, I think. So kind of the storytelling format was more of a narrative format then, and which is how it kind of probably moved into the short stories. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But like you said, yes, it is there in other literatures too, and at times it is difficult to read in those places also. I wouldn't say it's not. Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be so like in some cases, I think the complexity is coming from the language or the dialect. But here it is like when you read the paragraph, I think I understood what you were
Yeah.
trying to say. It's very, very you know, makes it a bit dry
Completely.
when you kind of put it that way, right? Yeah.
Correct. That's what I felt. I felt it might be nice to give it a rewrite to today's time.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Oh God, I'll be thrown out. Uh, so, like what we were having a discussion, how much of literature can be changed while we translate, and how much should not, I think. So that's always a debatable thing, I guess. So yeah, so translating classical literature
If I
is
may, I'd like to make a
yeah, yes,
point.
Bharatwaj.
See, the thing I think it depends on how good the writer is. Actually, see, I'm sure you've discussed 100 Years of Solitude in here. I don't know because there is no dialogue in that.
Hmm.
Absolutely narration. It's just he's so much capable. I don't know. I started reading one story and I couldn't get past that, and so I'm talking about Premchand's this one.
Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah.
so I think it depends on how good of a writer you are. I don't know. I might be wrong here, but
Hmm.
if you go back and read 100 Years of Solitude, you'll never feel like it's uh, the author is narrating the story to you. There is no dialogue, or it it was really good actually. And
Hmm.
someone else was mentioning about, see, we still have tomes, right? We still have atmospheric novels. There's a lot of world building and everything. There are novels which run up to 700, 800 pages even now.
Hmm.
So we are interested, but then no,
Yeah,
novelists have to be bold enough to come out with it, I suppose,
correct,
and the publishers have to support them.
correct. Correct. Maybe somewhere some of the things that he decided were, I don't know, maybe choices to keep it as simple as possible, or could be, I'm not sure. Or if he wanted to
True.
maybe sacrifice a little bit of the literature parts of it so that for the sake of the messages which he wanted to share could also be a reason. Or maybe something is really getting lost when it's in the translation, which is there in in the beauty when it is there as a Hindustani literature. And that's what Tulika very strongly feels. She feels the book is much more beautiful as it was when she read it, the short stories, and in Hindustani they are much better than what it is here. And she says that's a lot. He carries a lot through his language, which is kind of getting lost when it comes here. So yes. Okay. And so that the speech was could be found in this first website, the indianhistorycollective.com, in case any of you are interested in checking it out. I by any chance, Shamal Raoji, do you have some quotes or anything to share?
Which one, ma'am?
Did
And
you note down any quotes? Because I couldn't find anything which is, I don't know, I
very
didn't
few
find.
quotes in this book.
Yeah,
Very
very
few
few
quotes.
quotes. Yeah.
Very few quotes, but you can make it into a quote. It's hardly you are correct actually. Hardly there are quotes here. One or two lines I underline.
Okay.
Uh, one in the last, anger sometimes leads to insensitivity. Because this is a known statement, whether we can take it as a code or not. This is wonderful quote I like. Love, when insulted, becomes hatred. This is the
Okay.
last story.
Okay.
This I can take it as a quote I like. Love, when insulted, becomes hatred. And then
Okay.
in another case, after having frustrated, she says, she sat
Mm.
down and started crying. Death is far better than this life.
Mm.
But
I thought I had thought of asking Tulika and Suchi in cat if there's something which you would
uh,
like as quotes in Hindi. At least we can try to
uh,
understand. But yeah, both of them are
I,
missing today.
exactly. I got them underlined, but I didn't bring them out into a note so that could
Okay,
have been
okay.
read out immediately when you asked me. I felt it merit the status of a quote.
Okay.
But
Archana,
Yeah.
sorry, I just have to leave, Archana.
Okay. Thanks
Thank you
for
so much.
joining in, Meglai.
Yeah,
Meglai, before you go, this is
yeah,
our next read in the book club, The Bell
yeah.
Jar by Sylvia Plath.
I'll
Hope to see
hopefully
you.
get it read by the next this thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
thank you.
I'm going to
So,
drop off to Archana. Thank you.
okay.
It's a
Thanks,
wonderful
Ramya. Thank you.
joining and hearing to
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, bye.
So thank you, madam.
Okay.
you.
Thank you. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, as I said, the next read is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I'm really looking forward to reading it. So,
I
please do
placed an
join
order
in.
and I received.
Oh, you
Sure,
received
sure.
it?
I placed an
Okay.
order and my confirmation has already come that it has been delivered at Berhampur.
Okay, okay. It's not a very lengthy read.
We'll
It's
sure
about
read.
234 pages. I'm sure you'll easily finish it after you reach
Swan.
Shamal Raj.
Yes, yes. Sure, sure. We shall do it, ma'am.
Thanks for joining in, Meenal. I hope you enjoyed it today.
Yes, I did. Unfortunately, I lost connectivity,
Yes,
internet.
in
So
between.
briefly, I was off the radar and
Yeah,
joined, but I'm looking forward to.
yeah,
And,
great,
and I
great.
realized that I have joined 35 or nearly 35 sessions late, but I hope to catch up on all those videos. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. And in fact, I just wanted to let you know my elder son is in IB at the moment. So he's
Okay.
doing his IB year 2. So you teach
Okay.
English literature, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's taken Langlet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
teach Langlet.
Oh,
I'm a
you
teacher.
teach Langlet. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So Monday is his pre-board exam, prelim exam at school for Langlet. So right
Do
now
wish
at the
him on
moment
my
he is.
behalf. Yeah, do wish
Thank
him.
you, thank
So,
you.
what are the texts he's studying there?
So he's studying A Doll's House, and he's also doing Never Let Me Go
Okay.
by Kazuo Ishiguro, and he's also doing Death of a Salesman.
Okay, Arthur Miller's. Yeah.
Yeah, and the poems are Margaret Atwood's Dearly.
Okay.
Yeah,
We are
Dearly
also
is
doing Doll's House, but we are doing Carol Ann Duffy's The World's Wife
okay.
as our poems. Yeah.
Okay.
And we are studying graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman. We're doing that.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And Americana, Chimamanda Adichie.
Americana. Wow. Americana we read in the book club. So
Okay.
yeah, we loved it. And Mouse is one of my all-time favorites,
Yeah.
favorite
It's
graphic
very,
novels,
very
I'd say.
disturbing. Yeah. But it's a lovely graphic
It's a
novel.
lovely, lovely book. Yeah.
Mm.
Good, good. Great,
Good.
Minal.
Yeah, nice
Thanks,
meeting
thanks
you
for
too,
joining.
Archana. Yeah.
Yes, do join in next time too.
I'll do my best. Yeah.
You're there
It's,
in the newsletter? Or
yes.
yeah, okay,
I
great.
have, yeah, I voted for Sylvia Plath, so I was very happy that that was the
Oh,
book choice.
great, wonderful. See you, see you,
See you. Bye.
see you. Bye. I
Thank you,
hope
ma'am.
you, thank you, Shamal Raj. I hope you enjoyed Bharatwaj.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for joining in.
Yeah, hoping we can make it next time also. Let's see.
Yeah, please do. It'll be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. So see
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, see you
Thank
next
you.
month. Bye.